Good morning. What a great day today is. Very happy to be here as always. I think that's the first thing I always say because truthfully I am happy to be here. I want to talk about Israel and the Israelites today and their escape from bondage after 400 years of being in slavery and bondage to the Egyptians. Uh, so many times, when you're growing up, you heard this story, or you saw it, or you did different things. But then the more you mature and the more you begin to read and you get into the depths of really what's being said, you begin to understand how it so relates to your life and how it so relates to coming out of those bondages, coming out of that slavery that the devil has put you in. Because it's a roadmap, because it's the cloud, it's the pillar of fire. It's there standing before you to lead you. If you only hear one thing today, I want you to hear the following: God is here to deliver you today if you let Him. But see the roadmap that's there before you. See how Israel answered. There's a lot of times Israel didn't answer. Actually, the stubbornness of their hardness of their hearts, kept them. But God constantly was there, and He constantly showed them. I want to start with the main verse in Exodus 13, 21, 22. It said, "The Lord went before them by day in a pillar of cloud to lead them along the way, and by night in a pillar of fire to give them light, that they might travel by day and by night. The pillar of cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night did not depart before the people or from the people." And that's an important thing for us to understand in our own lives. I mean, God's there. We're the ones that cut God off. We're the ones that move Him back. He's there for us. He's always there for us. It may not show up in a cloud by day or a pillar by night, but His Holy Spirit is there. It is a cloud that covers us, and He's in the midst of the cloud. Just like He was in the midst of the cloud for the Israelites, He's there for you. He's there for you to be delivered from whatever it is. It might be just simple, trivial things. You think, oh, it's this, it's that, or it might be serious things like drugs or unclean or, pornography or whatever it may be. He's there to deliver you. I want to talk about that direction and the leading of how God brings us out, how He shows us the way. We need to look at some key points when God brought Israel out of Egypt and see how it relates to us. In Exodus 13:17, when Pharaoh let the people go, and I mean, that in itself was a miracle. 400 years of captivity, and here, obviously he regretted it at one point because he then went after them, realizing what he had done. This was his slaves. These were all the people that were doing all the things that his people didn't need to do, and he would pursue them because of that. But when Pharaoh let the people go, God led them not by the land of the Philistines, although that was nearer. For God said, lest the people change their purpose when they see war and return to Egypt. But God led the people around by the way of the wilderness toward the Red Sea. The sons of Israel went up in battle array, orderly ranks, marching formation out of the land. I mean, lest the people change their purpose. So many times God tries to take us out and show us where to go and where to walk or how to walk. And we begin to see what's going on around us. And we're thinking, I don't know if I can do that. I don't. We don't go back to realize God said. And if God said that he's then going to empower us, he's going to protect us, and that's what we're going to see here. We're going to see in many of these verses. That's what God did. There's a young man that sings a song in the church, and there's one verse when he comes to it, and he talks about defeating the lion and the bear and parting the Red Sea. It just, every time he sings it, it's just he did, and he can for me. And that's what you need to understand for you. He can deliver you, but you've got to go. And you got to go where he sends you. Maybe it doesn't seem like the right way. So many of us, so many times, many of us think, oh, no, I know better. I know how to do this way. I think I need to go that way. I need to be in this business and God has a plan. And you never really understand necessarily what the end result of the plan is, but he has a plan, just like for them. That plan was not to send them in a way that it might conflict with their thinking or bring fear on their thinking, fear to the point that they would turn back, and go back to Egypt where they had been enslaved for 400 years. So, in this case, especially, it took longer to get where they were going. But God wanted to lead them there. He wanted to bring them out. He didn't want them to just get caught up in all that was going on around them and lose the very purpose and change their purpose in what they were doing. They were coming out. God was bringing their deliverance. And it needs to be the same for you. You see God in the beginning and you begin to feel that he's really bringing you out of situations and all that. And then the unknown hits you. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what's going to happen. It doesn't matter. God knows. He knew when he took the Israelites by way of the wilderness. And the wilderness, what is the wilderness? The wilderness is places we've never been. He took them to places they've never been. And it says, God's presence was there before them all the time. He was in the cloud. Understand this. He was in the cloud before him. This wasn't just a cloud. This wasn't some freak thing of some thing that was just happening. And, oh yeah, look, that cloud's there. Maybe it's leading us. No, he was in the cloud. And he was in the pillar of fire by night. He was with them. Same with us. He's with us. He's there with us at all times if we let him. If we don't give to our sin and cut him off. It says in Hebrews 13:5, it says, let your character or moral disposition be free from the love of money. Because he's talking about here circumstances in our lives now. You be free from the love of money, including greed, avarice, lust, and craving for earthly possessions. And be satisfied with your present circumstances. That was the key for the Israelites. They needed to be satisfied. Look, again, he was bringing them out of bondage, out of slavery. And they needed to become satisfied and realize and have faith that he was bringing them out. He says, for he, God himself, has said, I will not in any way fail you, nor give you up, nor leave you without support. I will not in any degree leave you helpless, nor forsake you, let you down, relax my hold on you, assuredly not. He says all that, but yet when Pharaoh grew near to the Israelites looked up, and behold, the Egyptians were marching after them. And the Israelites were exceedingly frightened and cried out to the Lord. And they said, Moses, is this because there are no graves in Egypt that you would have taken us away to die in the wilderness? Why have you treated us this way and brought us out of Egypt? See, we always look, and when that lack of faith or that disbelief wants to hit us, we turn. And who do we turn on? The people that are leading and helping us come out of the very bondage that we've been in. So we can't. I want to read out of I want to go to the Bible and I want to read that full passage because it's very important. Because after that, he says, Moses told the people, "Fear not, stand still, firm, confident, undismayed." And that's what God wants you to do. He's bringing you out of all these circumstances. And look, you're like the Israelites. Your back's against the wall, and the enemy is before you, and you think you have nowhere to go. And Moses is saying, fear not, stand firm, be confident, undismayed. See the salvation of the Lord, which he will work for you today. For the Egyptians you have seen today, you shall never see again. Let the Lord fight for you, and you shall hold your peace and remain at rest. And then the Lord turned to Moses and says, why do you cry to me? Because God had already empowered Moses. He already given him the ability. He says, why do you cry to me? Because obviously Moses is there too in the midst of it, thinking, the Egyptians are in the front of me and the Red Sea is behind me. What are we going to do? And the Lord said to Moses, why do you cry to me? Tell the people of Israel to go forward. Let's go forward. There's a sea there. There is a sea. What are they going to do? He says, go to tell the people, to go forward. And then he said, Moses, lift up your rod and stretch out your hand over the sea and divide it. And the Israelites shall go on dry ground through the midst of the sea. I mean, what would you do? If you weren't locked into God, if your mind wasn't on him, and God says, it's okay, just go. I'll take care of it. And so how many times has he said that to you and to me? I know for me, many times, I'll come on circumstances and I'll think, I don't know, God. I don't know how I'm going to get through this. I have no idea how I'm going to get through this. But yet God already knew. He knows how you're going to get through it. And that's why he said to Moses, lift up your rod. And behold, I will harden. He says, not only will he deal with the Red Sea, but he says, I will harden and make stubborn and strong the hearts of the Egyptians. And they shall go into the sea after them, and I will gain honor over Pharaoh and all his host and all his chariots and his horsemen. The Egyptians shall know and realize that I am the Lord, when I have gained honor and glory over Pharaoh and his chariots and his horsemen. And this is a real key point here. Now, the cloud that was before them and led them everywhere that they needed to go. It's, at this moment it says, and the angel of the Lord who went before the host of Israel now moved and went behind him. So now God is going to be the rear guard. Not only does he lead us in and say, step forward and go, I'm going to be with you. Then he turns around and becomes our rear guard and protects us from the rear and ensures. And he says, and the angel of the Lord who went before the host of Israel moved and went behind them. And the pillar of the cloud went from before them and stood before the Egyptians, coming between the host of Egypt and the host of Israel. It was the cloud and the darkness to the Egyptians, but it gave light by night to the Israelis. And the one host did not come near the other all night. I mean, they were right there. They could have overtaken him. They could have overtaken him in the midst of the night. It talks about the different watches. Actually, if you read it, and it talks that the Israelites actually went in the fourth watch, which is usually early morning, probably still dark, and God took his cloud, and it says it brought that darkness. What did it bring? It brought confusion on the enemy. He was protecting the Israelites. He was bringing the confusion on the enemy. But what was he bringing to the Israelites? He was bringing the light. He was bringing the light and their ability to see, to go. But the dark went to the enemy, and they were being confused. And not only that, their chariots, froze up, and they had a hard time moving. And it is just so powerful when you begin to see what God did, in the whole thing. Let me read just a little more, and hopefully I don't use all my time up, because there's much more I want to say. It says, then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord caused the sea to go back by a strong east wind all that night and made the sea land dry, and the waters were divided. Most of us, we've been down by the ocean. We've been down by the lakes. When the water recedes, it's wet. It's not dry. It's wet. But it said the winds were there. They dried the very land. At every point, God makes the provision. At every point, he ensures our safety. At every point, he's there to take care of us and take hold of us. What a miraculous thing to see there. You're standing there and the whole Red Sea parts. And not only does it part, but you're going to get to walk on dry land. You're not going to be into your knees in mud and into your knees in sand or whatever. You're walking on dry land. And the Israelites went into the midst of the sea on dry ground, the waters being a wall to them on their right and on their left. Then the Egyptians pursued and went in after them, and in the midst of the sea, even all of Pharaoh's horses, his chariots, and his horsemen. And in the morning watch, the Lord, through a pillar of fire and cloud, looked down on the host of the Egyptians and discomforted them. That's what I was saying earlier. He made it difficult for them. Things weren't working right for them. He came and he discomforted them and bound and clogged and took off their chariot wheels, making them drive heavily. And the Egyptians said, let us flee from the face of Israel, for the Lord fights for them against the Egyptians. And that's what he does for us. He fights for us. The enemy comes and thinks he makes it difficult for us. But then God comes and he stands between us and the enemy, and he makes it difficult, and he makes the way out for us, and he makes it difficult for them to pursue us, and makes it difficult for the devil to pursue us if we are submitted to God. He's there to deliver us. Remember, just keep remembering, he's delivering the Israelites out of all the things that they were in bondage to in Egypt. And he's bringing them out. And he parted the Red Sea. Every time I think about that, he parted the Red Sea and took them through on dry land. That's just like God. That's his love of us, to give for us, the easy path forward. There it was, the easy path forward. There's security. There's shelter in God's presence. Keep remembering, God was in that cloud. Keep remembering, God is before you through his Holy Spirit. He's in the midst of you. And he says in Isaiah, and the Lord will create over the whole site, over every dwelling place of Mount Zion, over her assemblies, a cloud and smoke by day, and a shining of the flame, meaning fire by night. For over all the glory shall be a canopy, a defense of divine love and protection. That's what they were experiencing. They were experiencing the canopy. It was there. It was protecting them. He was behind them. He was before them. He was around them. He was over them. That's what he is for you. He does the same for you. If you allow him and you begin to take up and step forward, like it says, Moses says, tell them to step forward. You got to step forward. You got to start making the moves to let God bring deliverance to you, to bring you out, to bring and show you that you can come out on dry land, safe land. He's a security. He's a shelter. He says there'll be a pavilion for shade in the daytime. He protects them. He protects them from the sun and the heat, and for a place of refuge and a shelter from storm and from rain. He gives them everything. He was his provision. They're in the middle of a wilderness. They don't know what to eat. They don't know how to eat. And what happens? He gives them manna. He's our protection in the midst of everything that we go through. If we'll step forward and let the deliverance of our lives begin. You need to come out of the drugs. You need to step forward. You need to trust God. You need to come off the alcohol. You need to step forward. You need to trust God. You need to look to him. You need to come out of that, all the things, the unclean, infidelity, whatever it is, step forward and trust God. And he'll bring you out on dry land. He'll bring you out in safety. He'll bring you out in the midst of peace, in the middle of it. It says in Psalms 91, it says, he who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall remain stable and fixed under the shadow of the Almighty, whose power no foe can withstand. That's where you got to stand. You got to stand under that cloud, under the wings. You got to stand there and let him protect you. You got to submit your heart, and you got to step forward, and you got to begin to let him do it. The cloud was also a reminder of Israel who they served. In Ephesians 19:9 it said, and the Lord said to Moses, behold, I come to you in a thick cloud, that the people may hear when I speak, and when you and believe in you, and they believe in you and remain steadfast forever. Then Moses told the words of the people to the Lord. And then Moses then spoke, and went on to say, what God said to him. He said, I am the Lord your God, who has brought you out of the land of Egypt and out of the house of bondage. Just then is God speaking through Moses to them. He says, you should not make yourself any graven image to worship, or any likeness of anything that is in the heavens above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that's in the waters under the earth. You shall not bow down yourself to them or serve them, for the Lord your God is a jealous God. It's so many times, in your own life, you begin to build all these idols, and the idols, as it says in 1 John 5:1 or 5:21, become a replacement of God, in your heart. And this is what he's talking about. He's just brought them out. He's bringing you out. And in bringing you out, he's bringing you out to serve him. He's not bringing you out to serve other gods. He's not bringing you out to serve your idols. He's not bringing you out just to become a rich man. He's not bringing you out to become the greatest athlete. He's not bringing you out. I can go on with the list, on more and more and more with the list. He's bringing you out to serve him. And he says, you shall not bow down yourself to serve them. Don't give your heart to other things. He's a jealous God. He wants your heart. He wants you to serve him. And the cloud and by day and the pillar of fire by night, it was a sign of God's power. In Numbers 14:14 it says, and they will tell it to the inhabitants of this land. They have heard that you, Lord, are in the midst of this people of Israel. You know, it wasn't just that moment. It went out through the land what happened. It became a sign and a wonder to everyone. It went out, and everybody began to hear about it, that who you are. He says, you, Lord, have seen face to face. You know, you, Lord, are seen face to face, and that your cloud stands over them, and that you go before them in a pillar of a cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. The people knew that God traveled with them. And it brought great fear to them because they know they were coming their way. And they know God empowered them. This was a sign for many people. This was a powerful sign for many people. You know, I know our church, you know, it's an interesting thing because, you know, our church is, our church is in the middle of nowhere. We live in Spindale, North Carolina, you know, yet people have heard about our church throughout the world. Why? Because his cloud rests over us. His Holy Spirit, you know, abides with us. You know, it's a powerful testimony to come to one of our services, you know, because you feel and you sense and you know the presence of God is there. It's not us. Why are we known? It's not us. You know, we're known because the power of God has rested on us. And he has used us. And he has sent us out. And when they've seen us, they've seen God. And they know they've seen God. They've seen God in us do the work around us. And they're amazed. They think, who are these people? You know, these people are somebody that submits their heart to God and does what God says and steps forward, knowing that the Red Sea will part, knowing that they will come across on dry land. That's what empowers our church. God empowers our church. You know, the cloud by day and the pillar by night, the pillar of fire by night, it was with him. It went all the way with him to where? To right to the promised land. He led them right there, you know, till they could go in and partake of that milk and honey of what he had done for them. You know, so many times, you know, if you realize the presence of God is where you know and you begin to know his leadings, you know, in the midst of that point. And that's the whole thing that God was trying to show through the cloud and through the pillar of fire by night, that his presence was there and it led them. In spite of them, many times it led them, but it did lead them. You know, I know many times I'll be in the midst of church and, you know, I'll be singing and I'll be worshiping God, and, you know, in the midst of that presence. And then he'll just drop something in me and say, you need to share this on the radio program. You know, and I just sit there sometimes and I sit there in amazement. Who am I? Who am I? You know, but I do want to share in closing this one thing that happened. You may think it's trivial. You know, for me in my life, it was not trivial. But we needed to go buy a car. And we went to a friend. A friend of mine had a car, and I thought, oh, this is a nice car. And I fit really good. I'm a pretty good sized person. But we went the first time and sat in a car at a dealership, and I walked out of that dealership and thought, there's absolutely no way, you know. But then one Saturday morning, you know, we went. I just felt God say, you got to go. It's the time to go. The lease was running out on our car, and it was the time for us to go. And so I drove to Greenville. And the first thing that happened, if you remember the Israelites, first thing that happened is I went the wrong place. And I was, you know, just like the Israelites, they could have went the other way and then been challenged to go home. You know, I went the other way and momentarily was challenged to go home. And God said, go on, you know, and we went to the other dealership. And when we got to the other dealership, there were many things that happened, and I need to come to a close, but basically, I couldn't trust God. It was difficult. But yet, what he did for me that day was miraculous. I had such bad credit, and it was a difficult thing. But ultimately, in the end, he got us that car. It wasn't us. And he led us the whole way, and he brought us to that point. You need to follow God's leading. You need to see that God truly is in that cloud, and he's here to deliver us. Thank you today. Appreciate it much.